I'll go ahead and start with this, Todd. I guess I want to kind of pick your brain a little bit on, and I know I'm sure you and Jim have talked about this a lot, maybe on and off the air, but the Indiana still has one scholarship remaining for their roster for 2024, 2025. I've gone back and forth with a couple people on this, on having an open scholarship in this era of college basketball or in college sports in general. And I guess it's mainly basketball if we're really thinking about it. But is it as important nowadays when there's a lot of money involved and playing time promised or maybe not promised? Do you think it's a big deal for a program like Indiana to at least have a body filling that last scholarship, or is it not as essential as it used to be to have all 13 scholarships filled?
Yeah, I don't think it's as essential as it used to be. I know every team deals with injuries and that kind of stuff, but there are also, systems in place where I know there's been cases in the past where they've, brought players in off of intramural teams or the football team, or they've just had a practice squad or guys that can bang in the game. Like at this juncture, this is one of those you almost need to hit a home run with the Mr. Irrelevant pick in the NFL draft. Unless you're going to, this body is going to be somebody that is going to be able to bang every day with the big guys. That's always valuable for practices. I don't think you got to really luck into this scholarship being one that is a major producer for the team, like stat wise. So
Yeah.
I think it's, especially with NIL money, like they have the ability to have some guys not on scholarship that they can also, help with tuition or help with some money and those things. So I don't think if you could hit a home run and, steal some guy that ends up producing a bunch for you, then you're going to be one of few across the country that's able to do that.
Yeah, it's definitely a tough thing to balance, I feel like, because last year the issue was Woodson left the scholarship open. You had Ja'Kai Newton, who you knew eventually was going to be injured for the entire season. So right there, you already have technically two scholarships open. And then you have the Xavier Johnson injuries throughout the season. So for most of the year, you're playing with kind of three scholarship dudes. One of them that doesn't exist, obviously, because that wasn't filled. But I feel like that's the one thing that you kind of hope to avoid whenever you're doing something like that. You have to kind of hope everybody stays healthy and that your bench is deep enough to not have that big of a drop off.
Yeah, you roll the dice for sure when you don't fill that scholarship, but the way I kind of look at that is it's tough to fill that with somebody that's willing to come in and kind of accept the probability they're not going to play a whole lot. And as a coach, you roll the dice in every season with the injury situation, because you can, obviously you can't predict that. And let's all be honest, like we're all fans, we're all allowed to do this. It's accepted now in 2024. But whatever area of the team is struggling, so let's say it's rebounding, or let's say it's shooting, or let's say whatever it might be, we're all going to second guess they should have filled that roster with blank possibility at the time. Some Dalton Connect's gonna sign with somebody last minute and have a breakout season, and everyone's gonna say, why didn't we get that guy? Like that's a fact, and that's gonna happen. I'm not ripping the fans, I'm one of them. I do the same thing. But from a coach's perspective, it's hard to go sell a kid right now and tell him, hey, look, come in, you take this last 13 scholarship. It's most likely a project situation. That's where I honestly, I talked to Jim about it last week. The high school kids are the ones that are getting hosed the most from a recruiting perspective. Not the top 50 or 100 in the country, obviously, but the trickle down effect to all the other guys, because there are a lot. That 13 scholarship would be filled with a graduating senior from high school this year if this was 10 years ago or 20 years ago or anything prior to this year and last year. So that's where it is kind of, it stinks a little bit, because
And
those
for
are the
me,
kids that are paying the price.
and again, you would know better than I would. Just my thoughts whenever I think about how to fill the scholarship, if you even do fill it. If you do get somebody who's kind of an under the radar recruit, maybe it's an in-state guy, maybe it's not, maybe it's just somebody who's familiar with the Indiana program. is there a chance that they would take somebody who just wants to kind of cut their teeth? They know they're not going to get the playing time, but if you have the opportunity to play against elite talent and then take that to, like, say the following season, you jump in the transfer portal, then you can go play for a smaller program and potentially have that experience. And again, I guess it's not a lot of it is in-game experience, but just playing against those guys could make you a better player potentially when you're playing for a smaller program and you can get those minutes.
And you know what? Like, here's the you take one avenue this way, or you could choose to go another way. Like, that route is one route to take. The other route is to go to a small school, put up big numbers right away, and then transfer to a big school. So it's really hard to judge right now which one of those is going to be the most successful. I think individual programs, it'll be successful in different ways, and every year it might change. But for individual players, there are a lot of players, high school players, that would be filling those spots. And right now, I know for a fact, I've been told directly out of their mouth that there are a lot of big time major programs that are afraid to fill that last scholarship with a high school guy because they would rather get someone who's, take Indiana's bench last year with Caleb Banks as an example. Would Caleb probably have gotten more NIL money wherever he transferred to had he come from a small school with big numbers? Probably. But he went the other route, and he was at a big school, and he didn't get much playing time, so now he's going to go somewhere else. And like, let's use all of like CJ Gunn, for example, going to DePaul. Like, if he goes there and has a big year, the next year he's going to end up at, like, Oklahoma or Arkansas or somewhere. So, I mean, those are not, every year it's a moving target right now. The last scholarship, I think we all thought last year, and I hate to use a name here, but it proves this point for me, in that Peyton Sparks last year, we were all pretty excited because he put up pretty big numbers at Ball State.
Yep.
And that seemed like it was going to be a pretty solid backup right there. And although I think he had moments, and if he was regular in the rotation, I think he could have been a bigger contributor. I'm not saying he should have been. I'm just saying it just didn't work out. Like, the system just didn't fit right. It wasn't the right move. But in the summertime, we felt like it was a good addition. It was a good backup, just like adding the kid from Bellarmine. There's a chance that ends up being the best sign we had all year. There's a chance he never sees the floor. Like, we don't know that at this point.
Yeah, and I think that's a part of the intrigue of college basketball nowadays, especially when you take teams like Indiana and even to a greater extent with Louisville and Kentucky. They are building their rosters up from the absolute ground up. Both of them have brand new head coaches with Pat Kelsey and Mark Pope. Both, from the outside looking in, people thought were underwhelming hires, and I guess they probably were. It doesn't mean they won't work out, but they are doing something that I don't feel like a lot of major programs have done yet in this era of transfer portal NIL, and that is legitimately building your team from nothing. It's almost like you're creating a franchise in a video game, and you're just kind of putting whoever the heck you want on there, and not exactly whoever you want, because you can only get so much, but it adds a sense of intrigue and mystery, I guess, so to speak, because you don't really know what you got. And this includes Indiana as well, but just not on that same grandiose scale as those other two schools, because you're trying to fit all of these pieces together, and you're really not going to get a chance to see how it works until November comes around.
No, there is absolutely no doubt about it. I think kind of the whole country is living the life of a Kentucky fan for the last 10 years, because every year their roster seemed to be brand new. It was 5 brand new guys that, it was almost like their own Fab Five every year. And to an extent, you can say that was successful. You could also make the argument it wasn't successful. But you're right. Like, right now, it's kind of the norm. It's not like it's an unusual circumstance that Louisville and Kentucky, they're both their proximity, both their big time schools and big time program or conferences. And so, yeah, it's a little odd that both of those two schools, Kentucky is considered a blue blood, and I think always will be. So to have one of those schools dealing with issues you don't expect those schools to deal with, it's interesting. The funny part is as a basketball fan, like, you have to. I'm glad I not the old guy who sits there and doesn't want any change to ever happen, because I'm kind of accepting this whole new college basketball thing. Now, it's getting a little wacko. Pretty soon we're going to have players making $10 million a year, and they're going to have to figure something out to make sure this doesn't happen. But
yeah, because the NBA is that's gonna decrease their value, as crazy as that sounds, because there's so many guys that obviously already aren't going to the NBA because they know they're not going to get drafted, they're not going to make anything at that level. So why not make a smaller amount? But if you're making more money in college than you could in the NBA, even if you have kind of both options, that's kind of, I want to say dangerous, because I don't really know all the ins and outs of how all that stuff works. The NBA could always make change in their own right, but it's kind of crazy that that college basketball, at least in its current state, could compete with the NBA in a certain extent.
Well, I mean, let's just take, for example, let's say there was a LeBron James, generational talent, coming out as a freshman this year, and going to a college. I mean, a place like Kentucky, Arkansas, for example, places with big NIL money. I mean, Indiana, in that regard, could offer him $5 million a year.
Hello, everybody. Jim Coyle with Indiana Sports Beat Radio, and thank you for enjoying our content and videos. And make sure you hit that subscribe and notifications toggle so you don't miss out on anything, whether it's Indiana Hoosiers, the Boilers, the Colts, the Pacers, Indiana high school action, whatever's happening in sports. We're trying to bring it all to you, and make sure you don't miss out on a thing. Again, hit the subscribe button for us. Helps us out a ton. We appreciate each and every one of you. Thank you so much.